Hack the planet.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Happy Wednesday. Happy Wednesday TCM stream day. How's everyone doing? Oh, hi from Uzbekistan. Wow. Hello, everyone. Hello. We have dumb memes as the first comment of the day. So welcome, everybody. Hope everyone is having a great first half of your week. And I hope you have a remaining second half of your week. This is truly the hump day for me. It's been a very busy week so far. How's everyone doing? Let's get it. Yeah, we're going to have some fun today doing some WordPress log analysis intrusion, but we'll wait a little bit for people to funnel in, and we'll probably start the challenge in about maybe 20 minutes, maybe about half two. How's everyone doing? Good morning. Seeing a lot of good mornings. It's just past noon here for me in the lovely, I was going to say state of Canada, the lovely country of Canada. Hello from Albany, New York. Nice. Welcome. From Morocco. Wow. From Ghana. And I saw it from India. We have people from all over the globe today, as I'm sure we usually do, but this is awesome. We have folks from Uganda, from Kenya. This is awesome. Someone from Alaska. Cyber Alaskan, that's awesome. Hope you're all doing well. Feel free to shoot some questions in the chat. We're going to do a bit of Q&A, and then we'll hop over to a Blue Team Labs online room that I was going to do the other week when I last streamed, but we ran out of time. So we're gonna kick that one off today around the WordPress intrusion, but that will come shortly. And I'll tell y'all where we can find that challenge when the time comes. A lot of locations in chat right now. That's awesome. Yeah, people from all over the world tuning in for another amazing TCM Wednesday stream. Just while we're waiting for people to come in, I thought I'll mention, before I forget, just a reminder, we do have some cool stuff coming up next month, in the months following. So in April, we have the SOC Level 1 live training class that I'm hosting for the second time around. We did one back in January, and it turned out really cool. We had a great cohort and really baked in a lot of stuff into those 4 days of class. So that was a lot of fun. I'm really excited to do that again in April. So if you haven't taken the SOC 101 course, and if you want to kind of go on that track and maybe go for the the PSAA exam, or just sort of build up those foundational skills, I think the SOC Level 1 live class is a great way to sort of dive into that and really come out swinging with a ton of all of those foundations in your tool set. So if you do have sort of the employer budget, I know we're in sort of the first or second quarter of the year, maybe we're getting close. If you do want to sort of jump into that, we just a reminder there, we have that. And we also have Hacking AD Live in May. So some interesting, exciting live trainings in the works here. Question from Sir Kit here. This is going to sound crazy. Can you be a SOC analyst without having to work with Windows? I absolutely hate Windows forensics. Well, we don't see eye to eye on that. I love Windows forensics. I think it's some of those artifacts are just the most fun thing to dive into. But to answer your question, it's tough, right? It's already kind of everything is so Windows heavy and Windows based, right? Like most environments, you're going to have some sort of Active Directory setup. You're going to have Windows systems, sometimes in like, more startup kind of smaller companies, you might be more like Mac OS based and such. And so maybe there's some opportunities there, but I think sort of few and far between. I've never worked in an organization. I've never worked with an organization that does not have some sort of majority Windows footprint. And so I think it'll be a little bit more tough, but it's just sort of the way it is in environments these days. Any idea what the SOC 2 certification will be called? Yes. So we kind of, a few months back, we sort of, took a step back and thought about how we want to classify our certifications. And so we sort of landed on a model of, we'll have different levels, right? So it's going to follow the same format, but it's going to be sort of that professional level certification, because the SOC 2 is going to be quite a step up from sort of the associate level that you get with the SOC 101, right? So probably professional security or professional SOC analyst professional, I imagine. But we are pretty agile here with the way we name things. We want to make things the most competitive and the most the naming schemes that are going to make the most sense to what's being tested for. So PSAP, yeah, there you go. Most likely, but we are not there yet. We'll get there soon. Rubius, welcome. YouTube is trolling you, apparently. Apparently it's showing you my TikToks, but it's it's not showing you when I'm live. Good question from Josh. What will the badge look like? So with the SOC 101, we have the porcupine with the sort of shield and swords behind it. That was kind of a custom effort. Shout outs to Adriana for putting that one together. I think I'm a bit biased, but I think it's our coolest emblem for a course. But not sure, not decided on what the SOC 201 badge or the animal will look like yet. We kind of want them to be like evolutions. And so I don't know what a porcupine might evolve into, but we'll figure something cool out. Got a favorite part, module of the SOC 201 course? Hard to say. Maybe memory forensics or file system forensics. I'm hoping to really have a good deep dive into both like NTFS and also performing memory forensics at a deeper level and hunting things like DLL injections and stuff like that. So most likely some of that deep dive stuff. The way the course is kind of going to work, and maybe I'm hopefully not over promising things here or giving too much away, but the main overarching theme of SOC 201 is going to be sort of changing altitude and being able to scope out incidents in the enterprise at scale, and then sort of work our way down a sort of funnel and really deep dive in a handful of systems that we might be interested in during an incident. And so it's going to have that sort of at scale, how can we maybe threat hunt, or how can we respond to incidents and collect artifacts that we need at scale on hundreds or maybe thousands of systems. And then once we find, a system of interest or maybe a few, how do we then deep dive really into that system and uncover some very advanced detections or very advanced attacks in that regard. So, we will see what ends up being my favorite module. In SOC 101, it was definitely the endpoint security module, because again, we do sort of that live incident response stuff, and really a bit of, yeah, I guess you could say live incident response and really understanding the endpoint. That's sort of where my brain likes to live. I just used the Didier Stevens tool. Nice. Which one? He's got like hundreds of tools and they're all extremely awesome. But yeah, that's awesome to see. We use a lot in, we use a lot of his tool suite in SOC 101 and SOC 201 respectively. Armadillo armor. Yeah, I kind of thought about that. Like, we just like beef up uh, the animal a bit and make make him look a lot more tough. Do you like building courses or do you like hands-on doing the work? I would say I prefer doing the work. That's really where um, my skill set shines and where I really actually learn while I'm working. But it is nice to sort of distill all of that knowledge sort of into a nice package, like a course or a training, right? So it is really like I feel super privileged to be in sort of both scenarios where I can do the practitioner side and do consulting, and then also sort of, package that together for thousands of students to enjoy. What's the rough estimate on the amount of time it takes to develop a full course? That's a good question. Really depends. And I certainly haven't developed as many courses as uh, Heath or Alex or even Andrew Bellini. So I'm kind of the least seasoned course developer, I guess you could say, in the academy. But SOC 201 is definitely taking a lot longer than SOC 101. Mostly just because of all of the amount of labbing and simulations I need to do to collect artifacts, and a lot of research goes into some of those more advanced techniques as well. So, um, yeah, it can vary. It can vary pretty wildly, I found. I like your questions today, Sir Kit. What's the difference between DFIR, digital forensics, incident response, and SOC work? A lot of people assume it's the same. Can you sort of break it down? Yeah, you're going to see different definitions all over, but they are, they have a lot of similarities, right? If we think of like our standards, SOC analyst kind of thing, usually you have different stages or different levels, right? You might have sort of a triage analyst, they call it, or like a level one maybe analyst that's again doing sort of that initial alert or alarm triage, right? So as alerts come in, they're performing like a little bit of a high level disposition on the legitimacy, whether it's a false positive or not, and also like understanding the scope, right? Is it something that could be affecting a single endpoint that maybe is not internet connected, or versus something that fired off on a ton of endpoints, right? So again, performing that initial scoping of an incident to sort of prevent sort of this whack-a-mole approach where you patch one system and then five more sort of spring up. So but when you start getting into sort of these higher tiers in the SOC, right, these maybe level 2 or level 3, and again, every organization's different, right? Everyone's going to have different teams and different structures and priorities. But typically, when we get to those higher tiers in the SOC, there's more of a focus on performing that actual remediation, right? Particularly with a level 2 analyst, is what I've seen in most organizations I've either worked with or seen. But again, that's sort of performing the incident response, maybe leading the teams or working with the incident response teams if there's not a dedicated IR team, right? Maybe it's sort of an ad hoc kind of thing. But again, performing that, most parts remediation, right? If we think about where the triage analyst lives, mostly around that detection stage, someone on the incident response side might, be more focused on the later stages of that model, right? The actual analysis response, right? Capabilities. Forensics is really interesting because it can sort of be, again, that specialized sort of thing, but it can live pretty much anywhere in that model, right? We might be performing forensics to help scope an incident. We might be collecting forensic artifacts to help out with, a response effort, right? So they can vary widely, but again, usually these skill sets are a little bit more specialized as you start getting into DFIR or DFIR. But there's always a ton of paths that you can go down. Is consulting in blue side of security a thing? Yeah, definitely. Um, Incident response consulting, yeah. We have sort of this concept of retainers, right? So if your organization doesn't have sort of an internal incident response component, or maybe a sort of an ability, right? You can sort of maybe outsource that out to like sort of external parties. Same kind of deal with forensics as well. So there's definitely space in sort of the blue team field for consulting. For example, maybe incident takes place and you're sort of uh, directed or brought in to sort of again scope out the incident and work on it and work within the internal SOC with the actual members of the organization as well from an outside perspective. So yeah, there's consulting all around. How is blue team different in the cloud, or is it pretty much the same thing? There's definitely differences, right? As we start moving towards the cloud, sort of the perimeter a little bit shifts from sort of these perimeter detections and sort of, we think about securing the perimeter versus in the cloud, a lot of it is focused on identity and access management, right? So a lot of the same principles still apply, right? The same sort of hardening efforts that we have, the same sort of tiered model of access, role-based access, stuff like that, that we have in the enterprise. But a lot of that sort of gets shifted, and the sort of perimeter it really relies on identity, and so similarities, but definitely a different kind of beast. Once you start working with cloud environments, you can also have things like Active Directory in the cloud, right? So a lot of our same foundations and principles still apply from a defense perspective, whether we're dealing with virtualized machines in the enterprise versus somewhere on Azure servers, right? Seeing a few like roadmap kind of questions. I don't always have the best like one size fits all answer for roadmaps, right? Really just depends on where you're starting from and the sort of direction you want to go. But for a security analyst role, it's tough. Like practical experience, in my opinion, is king. And sort of having things that you can either blog about or talk about in interviews rather than just checking some boxes here and there. And so again, I would just focus on getting that hands-on experience, maybe building out a lab. TryHackMe is a pretty good resource for working with some of these tools, right, in a sort of lab environment if you can't build things up locally. But I don't really have specific recommendations on like, certifications that you need to check the box, right? Because it's different everywhere you go. It's different globally. Obviously, I have a little bit of bias. I think the SOC 101 course is really going to get you a very good head start and build out all of those foundational skills that you need. But again, it's not the only training out there. It's not the only course, not the only certification, right? And so I don't have a single recommendation for you other than, maybe figure out where you want to be in a few years from now and sort of work your way up to, some of the bridges you might need to cross. So I would say, look at, the some job postings of places you might want to work at, or like positions that you might want to be within the next year or so, and just look at the requirements, right? Again, sometimes the requirements are not very helpful, right? It might be asking for, a CISSP for a triage security analyst role, right? Which just doesn't make sense. But, look at sort of the patterns as you start to look at more job postings, right? It's kind of like being a SOC analyst itself, right? It is sort of looking for patterns and sort of doing that aggregation to see, hey, I keep seeing, these skills pop up, right? I keep seeing, folks want someone with Splunk experience, right? So maybe you go install the enterprise trial version of Splunk and start ingesting data and working with that, right? So that's why it's hard to give a roadmap, because again, it's just entirely dependent on where the jobs are and what they're asking for. And so that's always been my advice. That's always what I've done, is I just research a position that I'm interested in, in the next few months or so or a year, and then just write out requirements, right? Sort of build out my to-do list in that way. I know some people have different advice. Some people go about things differently. That's just how I done it, and that's the only way that I can really discuss from a personal sort of perspective, anecdotally, right? Did you go from AZ900 straight to AZ500? I think so. I don't know if I went straight to it, but I definitely got 900 first because I remember back in the day, I don't know if they still do this. Microsoft has every few months, they do like a training kind of week or something where you can sign up and they're going to do like a live class on these sort of AZ900, Azure fundamentals, things that you need to know. Kind of in this live format that you need to attend, right? You sign up for it. They check your attendance or whatever. But after those few days, I forget how long it actually is, they'll actually send you a voucher for taking the AZ900. So that's why I got that. It was just sort of like a free thing. I was like, hey, why not? And then from there, at the time, the position I was working in, we were sort of doing a lot more Azure focused stuff. They needed sort of a cloud security engineer type person to fill, and so I sort of took the initiative to, go for the AZ500, that Azure security engineer role or certification, and sort of build out my skills that way, and ended up doing a lot of cloud stuff there. So, again, that's kind of similar to my answer before. Is like just what are the requirements either in your role or a role that you want to take, and can you fill those in some way, right? Can you, take some training that's relevant, or can you, that's always been my sort of goal, is just, figure out where the gaps are and sort of try to fill them, become a more valuable analyst or engineer, right? First time viewer, how's everyone doing? Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining, Rick. What do you think about job postings for SOC Tier 1 positions, including auditing for various frameworks on top of alert triage investigation? Yeah, honestly, my hot take, I don't know if it's a hot take, but a lot of like these entry-level analyst positions, for some reason or another, are just getting ridiculous. There's a certain like set of skills that, in my mind, a Tier 1 analyst should have or should work towards before they can sort of move their way up in the SOC, right? And for some reason, companies like to put in the most random things on these job postings. Maybe they have a specific requirement and they're not actually trying to fill in like a traditional T1 analyst. They want someone that can wear many hats, right? I've been there before, and so it's definitely a thing. But it can be a little bit difficult. I think even just a few years ago, a lot of these job postings made a lot more sense. They weren't asking for certifications that require 5 years of experience to even take to get an entry-level job. So it's tough. Yeah, like especially if you do it the way I do it, where you're just looking at positions and sort of trying to pick out the patterns for things that you might want to pick up or build up in your resume. It's hard. You can start going down rabbit holes, which is a little bit tough. But that's why I say like a good blue team oriented course is going to fill in a lot of those gaps for you and really, give you a solid skill set that's going to apply to many of these job postings, right? You're never gonna have every requirement, right, or every bullet point on a job posting apply anyways, right? I've never fit the bill 100% on any of the jobs that I've applied to, and so it's kind of like a chess game, you could say. When is SOC 201 going to be released? Question of the day. I don't have an exact release date, and I don't want to give one because things happen. And like I was saying earlier, this course has been a monster to sort of scope and sort of get direction in, because it could really go in so many different directions. I could keep developing this course for the next 5 years, and I still it still wouldn't be, in my mind, complete, right? So we are thinking, in the next month or so, right? So or maybe a month or two. So I don't want to give an exact date for that reason. Just because things happen, things can even happen during QA processes, right? So maybe I need to go back and rebuild some labs or something. So no exact date, but relatively in the near future, and definitely before the summer is what I can say. You say SOC 2.1 is more DFIR? Yep. It's really focused on incident response, threat hunting at scale, and some deep dive forensics as well. I think are really the most valuable things to sort of help you move up in a role. Like assuming the SOC 101 is more geared towards maybe that triage or tier 1 analyst. Well, if you want to go down incident response specializations, or even just work up to a tier 2 or tier 3, or get into digital forensics, right, or threat hunting, these are the sort of skills you need to detect more advanced threats, right, and also perform many of these things at scale, right? So in SOC 101, we work with a lot of tools and technologies and different methodologies on how we can apply different tools to, say, looking at network data or looking at endpoint telemetry, right? But how do we do that at scale, right? How can we, during an incident, how can we collect artifacts and related evidence from hundreds of systems that we can then use to sort of parse down and find things of interest in kind of like a threat hunting way, right? So it really converges, in my mind, those three pillars, which are going to be the most valuable skills that you'll take in any kind of role that you want to end up in, right? All right, I will introduce the challenge for today. We are just at half time here, or half past. So let me flip this on, and I'll give you the link here. So if we go to Blue Team Labs Online, blueteamlabs.online. If you go to the challenges section, you'll need to sort of register if you're not in. But this was, we're going to do, whoops, I need to sign in here. We're going to do one of the rooms that I meant to do the other week, but we were doing a different one and we sort of ran out of time. So what we're going to do is filter for the free rooms that are retired. Should be, let's focus it. Can't remember. No, there's no hard ones. So we have to do medium. And it's this log analysis one, this compromised WordPress system here. So I'll get started on that in a second. I don't think it should take too long. But hopefully we can wrap this up relatively quickly. And then, of course, we'll do some more Q&A for any questions that are queued in the meantime. All right. Let me make sure I'm all set up here. I already have the zip file, but let's kick this one off, shall we? So the scenario here, pretty short. One of our WordPress sites has been compromised, but we're currently unsure how. The primary hypothesis is that an installed plugin was vulnerable to remote code execution vulnerability, which gave an attacker access to the underlying operating system of the server. So pretty common kind of vulnerability or exploit here with WordPress plugins, right? Sometimes if you ever done some CTFs before that are WordPress based, you're typically guessing credentials, getting into the sort of back end or administrator dashboard of a WordPress site. And then from there, you basically own the keys to the kingdom. If there are no, security restrictions in place, you can pretty much arbitrarily upload a plugin that, you can just upload a reverse shell plugin, right? These things exist, or a web shell plugin, right? And so that's a common thing that we see sometimes with some of these CMS style sites that are vulnerable to these kind of things. Oh yeah, the link should be in chat there for Blue Team Labs Online. All right. And so to basically start off the challenge, we, of course, need access to that log file, which we can download just by clicking on download file there. I should already have it on this machine from last time. And we just need to unzip it. And so let's unzip that. With the password, you need to provide the password of BTLO. Oops, if I can type. And then it's called BTLO underscore WordPress.zip. So let's inflate that access.log file. It seems to be the only thing we get here. There we go. And we should be able to get started. Let me full screen this. And looks like we're going to be dealing with some manual log analysis, which I really enjoy doing. It's kind of therapeutic for me to really just sort of dig into these sort of lined log files here, especially when it's like Apache or Nginx logs. Just kind of fun thing to do. Of course, we could take a log file from something like a web server and upload it into Elasticsearch or Splunk or something and sort of do things that way. Obviously, a much more powerful tool set than doing things in the command line. But sometimes we don't have the option, right? Sometimes we need to just quickly cut up something or transform or manipulate data in the command line. Maybe if we're remoting into a system, or again, if we just don't have that sort of graphic interface option. But it's also applicable, a lot of these things that you can even see here, these different bash shell kind of commands, the grep, sorts, unique, cutting up things using sed or awk, right? A lot of these are going to come in handy when you're dealing with almost any kind of, data or output in the command line, right? Whether we're pulling back, some volatility data, right? If we're doing some memory analysis in the command line, how can we sort of format the results that we're getting and sort of do some hunts on, suspicious process IDs, right? Or image names, right? So a lot of stuff is we're probably going to cover today is going to be really applicable for a number of different, facets or skills, right? And so we have this access.log file. And again, we're going to do this in the command line. I want to see how long, how many lines this file is. So we sort of get an idea of what we're working with, right? We could just run something like ls-a or ll here to list out sort of the size of the file itself, which can give us a bit of indication. But I just want to count the lines at this point. And so I'm going to do wl for, whoops. And then provide access.log. Whoops. It's word count, not WL. There we go. And L here is just the argument to count, hey, I only want the lines, right? If we were to just do word count by itself, we're going to get, line count, word count, like the actual string of a word, and then the actual character count itself. And so in this case, it looks like we only have 2,000 lines, which is really not a lot. So it's most likely this log file was already condensed somehow, or maybe temporally sort of extracted out. So we're only looking at a subset of data, right? Because 2,000 lines is not a ton to work with. So with that, it's probably going to be, it's going to make our lives a lot easier, right? So this is why you always want to sort of cut down data and filter it as you need to. And so to start out, we could sort of start jumping into the file and manipulating it however we want. But to start us off, I'm going to go off this first question here of identify the URI of the admin login panel that the attacker gained access to. Include the token, right? So include the token is interesting because if we're, if this is a standard kind of, Apache log file, right? Let me just cat out a few of these lines here. We don't have a ton to go off of where a token might be, right? It's most likely going to be some sort of URL parameter. Because again, we're not really getting like body information that's, in a post request, for example. We're just sort of seeing the full URI that was accessed. And some other things like, we'll get the user agent, maybe a refer page, of course, the IP address, timestamp, stuff like that. So there's a set number of columns or fields that we can actually extract from these files. And so that's only as much as we have to work with, right? And so in this case, we're looking to identify what the admin login panel is that the attacker gained access to. And so, of course, we can do this in a number of different ways. The way you do this or the way you prefer to do it is probably different than the way I might do it in this example. Because there's just so many different ways you can do this kind of thing, right? So what we can do is just cat out that access log file. obviously we're going to print out 2,000 individual lines or events sort of to the screen here. So what we can do is sort of grep out for things of interest, right? So I can pipe that output over to grep. And then maybe we can look for something like the word admin, right? If this is an admin login panel, it looks like it's looking for a PHP file, which is pretty common with WordPress. So we could even do something like, I want to grep out for just PHP files, right? So just .php. We, of course, have to escape out the dot there with a backslash. So if we do that, we should cut our results pretty significantly, right? And in this case, I think I can already see the answer here with the token. So again, just doing something very quick like that can really cut things down and help us out. So now we're just pulling back, again, those PHP files, but that might not be enough, right? We might want to do some more cutting up of this file, right? So I can pipe that output now over to the cut command. We can specify a delimiter to cut by, right? So if you look at that output of the file, each field or column is sort of separated by space. And so we can set the space character as sort of our delimiter, say, hey, every time there's a space, treat that as a different field or a different sequence in sort of, if you think about maybe like a CSV file, right? Sort of comma delimited. In this case, we're sort of space delimited here. And in this case, I know that, and so what I want to do is pull back the URL that was accessed, or like the page that was accessed, like the admin.php, for example. And I know that's in these standard Apache logs, that's going to be 7 as the field number, just from experience and doing this kind of thing a lot. But for example, 1 is going to be the IP addresses, right? So that's going to print out just the IP addresses or that first field in the file. And so, if you didn't know what you're really working with, you could just sort of trial by error, just keep going up until you reach 7, which, yeah, as you can see here, is going to be just pulling back the unique, or not unique yet, but just pulling back all of the different URIs or URL routes that were accessed, right? And we can see some interesting things. We have, again, the sort of WordPress login page here, looks like. We have some uploads here with a freak.php. I think that might come in handy. So again, it's like the third command we kind of ran, and we're already getting a good grasp on some things of interest that we might want to check inside of this file, right? Of course, we're not really putting a timeline together in our heads yet, but we are seeing some things that, hey, let me write this down and return to it later on, right? If I don't find anything else. But we can take this a step farther. You can see we're getting a lot of duplicate results. And so we can do some more fun things. Yep, there you go. So we have teraflops way ahead of me, moving at a mile a minute. You called it. Yep, we're going to pipe this over to unique. And that's going to say, hey, every time we have, some of these lines that are connected here, I only want a sort of single aggregated version, right? And before we do that, I'm actually going to run the sort command. What that's going to do is make sure that every single duplicate entry is sort of stacked on top of each other, right? Because, for example, before we were just doing it based on the actual timestamp or the chronological order in which these files were, or log files were written, right? So someone could access this login file, access a different page, and then access the login file again, and it's not going to be stacked, right? So by sorting the results that we're getting, we're making sure that every single instance of login.php is stacked up. And then we can pipe that over to unique. And that's going to just really cut down on a lot of the noise. We're still getting quite a bit because, WordPress is a pretty noisy kind of CMS, right? So we have all of these different includes that are requested, these different JavaScript files, right? But we always have ways to clean that up too. I'm going to append the C argument here to just count up all of those unique entries, right? So you can see it's giving us that aggregation now, right? So this specific URL was accessed 10 times, right? Opposed to this one, which was only 1 time. And so finally, we can pipe that over to one more sort command and append the NR here to basically say, give me the top values in sort of that descending order. And I want to count them by the number that is next to each line, right? So I want to figure out, hey, what is the most access file and move downwards. So when we do that, we're going to see a lot of ones here for all of these unique sort of, one-time events. And so I'm interested in what was accessed more than once, obviously, because if an attacker is accessing an admin page or a dashboard, probably not going to just access it once. We might typically see quite a few more, right? So I'm going to pipe that over to head command to say, hey, I only want to pull back a certain amount of the top values. And for example, with the n parameter here, I can just say I want to pull back the top 5. And doing that, really cleaned up a ton of noise here. And as you can see, in first place, we have, this login page here with 135 hits, right? So in doing just some of these basic, bash sort of syntax commands here, we were able to take a 2,000 line file, which again is not a ton, but the same methodology applies. And we were able to cut that down into some things of interest, right? So this admin login page, again, in this case, we're seeing that freak.php page as well. That doesn't look too normal, right? It looks a little bit anomalous. So again, something we might want to write down and return to later. But in this case, I think this is what we should be looking for here, because it also has the ITsec HB token, whatever that means, for admin login. There we go. So that was answered correctly. We identified the admin login page that the attacker gained access to. And how do we know that the attacker actually gained access, right? We were kind of inferring just because it was, hey, the top sort of page that was accessed. But now that we have this URL, we can use this as a pivot point to investigate things farther, right? We can now say, hey, what IP addresses were accessing this page, right? Because now we're only getting the URLs, which is very helpful for doing that statistical sort of analysis, but it's not super contextual in terms of who was accessing and when, and with what user agents, right? And so what we can do is sort of take that string there and use that as our sort of grep pivot point here, right? So I can just do grep. I can fill in WP login. Might need to escape some of this stuff. We'll see if that works. And then access.log. There we go. So now we're just pulling back the results. Should be 135 of them, if you remember, that relate to just that page that was accessed, right? So now what we can do, because we know that in this case from our question that the attacker accessed this page, now what we can do is sort of do the same thing. We can cut based on those delimiters of spaces. And this time I just want to pull back the IP addresses. So now that we've done that, same kind of deal that we just did, right? We can clean that up. We can sort them. We can pipe it over to unique-c to count up the results. And then one more sort command there to say, hey, let me order them by the top values sort of thing. And doing that, there we go. Looks like we get some interesting results here. It looks like we have maybe an error result that was in the log itself, so we can kind of ignore that. But we are seeing some of the top IP addresses now that were hitting that login page, right? So again, we might want to document some of these, right? Looks like we have quite a few here, which is interesting. And so that's how we can sort of start to use what we find in order to pivot and look off of additional IPs or entries, right? And so again, we still don't know which one the attacker might be here, but we know the attacker is somewhere in this list, right? So whether it be we start correlating this with other events, or start doing reputation checks on these IPs to see, hey, were they involved in any nefarious activity in the past, right? Or were they part of, or are they associated with any active malware going on, right? So there's a ton that we can do, but in this case, this question really sticks out to me too. So we can sort of jump over to this next question, which is, I think, going to help us narrow down what IP is of interest here. So this question is, can you find the two tools that the attacker used? And so again, you might be thinking, how the heck are we going to figure out what tools an attacker used just from this, garbled mess of logs, right? And the way, we can figure that out is, just think about what fields do we have access to, right? So if I just take one of these, so I'm just going to grab the first line here. We have we only have a strict set of fields that we have to work with because we were only given this access log file, right? It's not like we can hop on the endpoint and maybe look at, the memory dump or, the file system, right? To figure out what tools were used. And so in my opinion, the only two really indicators that can stick out here for us that might be useful are things like the actual URL that was accessed, right? So maybe if a specific tool, like a hacking tool that was used, has a specific signature or fingerprint that it maybe like uploads a file with a particular name on the system, right? That might be a giveaway. If it's something, maybe attacker is running some sort of directory busting attack, we might see, a ton of just different directories all being attempted to be accessed from the same IP address. And we might see a ton of 404s when, certain files or directories were not found. The other thing here that is usually very interesting to us is the user agent, right? So what actual system and software and operating system was making that connection, right? For example, if I curl a web page, I'm not going to see, this string here of Mozilla 5.0. I'm going to see the curl utility, right? And a lot of tools, not even just sort of living off the land binaries, but a lot of common enumeration tools or scanning tools have their own unique user agents, right? Because they're sort of built in or baked in to how the tool works. And oftentimes you can change this in sort of a configuration setting or maybe an argument that you append. But a lot of times, attackers are lazy. They don't change the default values, right? So we can sometimes identify some interesting activity through user agents. In other cases, maybe an attacker misspells something in a user agent, right? Maybe instead of Mozilla, they accidentally type it with one L. And so that can be another thing that once we start aggregating user agents, we can identify interesting tactics, right? Or if in the sort of command and control scenario, maybe an attacker is purposely setting their user agent to something specific so they can filter out any, network traffic that does not contain that user agent, right? So there's legitimate use cases and also legitimate malicious use cases as well, right? So in this case, we already know how to sort of cut these logs up, right? So we're going to do that, but in this time we're going to do it based on the user agent, because I think that's going to be our tell here in terms of, hey, what tools were used? Because if Nmap was used to scan, we might see Nmap in this user agent string. If GoBuster, for example, was used to sort of enumerate directories or files, well, we might see GoBuster in here as well, or Hydra, for example, right? And so same kind of deal, right? We can cut up. This time, I want to cut up based on these quotation marks, right? Because I want to grab everything within these quotation marks. And it looks like we have a few, right? The URL request itself, the sort of request string has its own sort of quotation marks. The refer code here has its own. And so what we need to do is basically comment that out, or sort of allow us to use that quotation marks character. So we need to use a backslash there. And then what we can do now is sort of start working our way up the different fields that we might want to grab to make sure that we're grabbing just this string. And I don't know off the top of my head what it is. Is it 5? Nope. So if I start with 1 here, we're just going to grab sort of the timestamp values. 2 looks like it's going to be that request string, right? So that's not exactly what we're looking for at this point in time. 3 is the I guess in between the request string and refer, right? So it's kind of it's just trial and error at this point. Was it 5 or 6? Yeah, so it's 6. Okay, let me go back there and try 6. And now we're just pulling back the user agent strings. All right, so same kind of deal. Now we can cut this up and filter it to our liking to get rid of all these duplicate results. So we can then focus on hey, what is, either what are the top values, or what are the rare values, right? What only appears once, which is usually more interesting to us from a user agent perspective, right? Because typically, we have certain user agents in our environment that map to like, hey, I'm running Firefox, or I'm running Chrome, or, Microsoft Edge, God forbid. But, we have a sort of subset of user agent strings. We might have different versions, right? But if we see anything rare, or anything that, is only appearing once or twice in the logs, again, get in that threat hunting sort of mindset. That's what we want to look into. So same kind of thing. We can sort out the results and then do the unique command to count up the results, and then one more sort, one more sort command to say, hey, let's get those in reverse order based on the number. All right. we're getting, looks like, a bunch of errors, which is not fun. These aren't errors like in our command line. These are actually just lines in the file. So it looks like for some reason or another, the Apache server or whatever it was logging a bunch of errors, which kind of just really gets some noise, which is a bit annoying. So we can clean that up a bit. I'll just run our same command. I'll do grep tac v there to say, hey, let's pull back everything not matching whatever string we provide. In this case, I'm just going to search for the word error because I want to sort of ignore all of those. And there we go. That looks a bit better. We're still seeing some weird results here and there, which, again, if we really wanted to, we could cut up some more. But I think we can kind of work with this, right? So again, we have a lot of what seemingly look legitimate here, right? We have a ton of sort of Firefox user agent strings, some Safari as well that you can see. If you're ever unsure, you can actually parse these strings on a website, right? Actually, I can demonstrate that. Might as well. So I'm just going to copy this string here, hop over to the browser, and just type in parse user agent, and we should be able to find a site that can do this for us. Whatismybrowser.com is a good example here. And so I can just paste that in and parse in that user agent string. And then it will give us this information and start breaking down. Wow, this site has a ton of advertisements. Yikes. But maybe you can see the point here. It's breaking down things like the software version for us, right? So you can see it's running Firefox, the software version, right? The layout engine, stuff like that. We can get some information about, hey, this was most likely a Linux system that was accessing this, which can be a little interesting to us. But basically, that's sort of how we can make sense of those strings if they do seem a little, overbearing. But as you scroll down, in this case, again, I'm looking for more of the unique or the rare user agents that might not fit in. So we can see Python requests. That's immediately interesting to me. That would mean someone, is using the Python request module to make a connection to this website, right? So oftentimes you see that in exploit scripts, right, that are running maybe Python scripts. But I do see some interesting ones here. WP scan, WordPress scan. It's a very common WordPress scanning or enumeration kind of utility, right? If I just do a search for WP scan, again, if you don't know any of these user agents, you can just do a search for what you're finding, right? So in this case, we can see WP scan is used to, again, find vulnerabilities or different misconfigurations within WordPress sites, right? And it looks like we have one request, which is interesting, from WP scan. This is a little interesting. I think this was maybe cleaned up for the challenge purpose, because if you're running WP scan against a WordPress site, you're going to have tons of requests, right? It's a pretty noisy kind of utility. Same with SQL map, right? So if you're looking for SQL injection or you're looking to automate SQL injection and detection, SQL map is a pretty popular choice. Again, seeing one request here is a little interesting. Typically, you would have a bunch, but in this case, yeah, looks like we've identified both these tools here, right? So these are pretty common tools. If you've ever done like CTFs, you'll probably see a lot of these pretty often. But even in the wild, we see things like SQL map all the time. WPS scan as well for WordPress sites. So it looks like those are the tools. So we have WP scan and SQL map. There we go. And now that we've sort of, broken this down a bit and sort of identified, this is now most likely malicious activity, right? Before we were a little suspicious on some of those IP addresses and we needed to do more research. Now we've done sort of the more research that we need. And now we can figure out, hey, what IP address made this request? What IP address made this request? And at that point, we're really starting to get closer to, who is kind of behind this kind of thing, right? And so what we can do is cat out the access log again, and I can just grep for WP scan, right? And there we go. We're getting one result. Let me clear this out and rerun it so I'm not covering the screen. There we go. So I'm just catting out the access log. grepping for that tool that we identified through the user agent, and we're getting one result to this specific IP address, right? So looks like for some reason or another, this IP address decided to scan the website. Again, I don't know why there's only one request here. Typically you'd have hundreds, thousands, but in this case, we just have the one, which is easy to identify. And we can do the same kind of thing for SQL map as well, right? There we go. Interestingly, we're getting a different IP address that was doing the actual SQL injection kind of automation, what it looks like. And so, again, we have two IPs of interest now. We could do our kind of normal triage. Maybe we're looking up where this IP address is located, what ASN number it belongs to, right? What organization? Maybe if it's on any reputations, right? Databases, right? Like Virus Total or something like that. Just for example, we can hop over to Virus Total and paste in these IP addresses just to see if they are malicious or not. IP addresses can get reused, right? So in this case, looks like it might have been reused and was perhaps, I don't know, malicious at one point, maybe not anymore. We can see it's located in Japan. What about the SQL map one as well? So paste that in. And again, it looks like we're getting some green results here. So no detections. So maybe this was just old data, or it was just sort of a random IP address used for the challenge, right? This is not obviously an active compromise anymore. But again, those are the kind of things that we can do at this stage. So now that we've identified this, we could also use these IP addresses as a pivot point now, right? We could say, hey, show me all of the requests that were made from this IP address, not just the one that was using WP scan, right? For example, I can just grep out that IP address against access.log. It looks like we have a ton more requests just from that, potentially malicious individual there, right? And so getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, if I push this up a bit, we can see this was the Python request that was made, which is interesting for this specific page here. So that might come into play in a moment, but let's move on to the next question. The attacker tried to exploit a vulnerability in contact form 7. What CVE was the plugin vulnerable to? So do some research, right? So we might just need to Google this particular WordPress plugin and say, hey, were there any CVEs associated with that plugin in particular, right? So that's what they mean by doing some research. First thing we can do is just make sure we're seeing this in our data, right? So I can just cat for maybe contact and run that against access.log. Whoops. Wait, I'm just catting out the word contact. I want to do grep contact. And there we go. So now we're pulling back some results here. I know just because I'm a bit zoomed in, it's a little tricky to see. Usually these are just one line sort of events that make it a lot easier to identify. But in this case, we can see contact form 7 is indeed used here. We can see the sort of WP content, which is a common WordPress directory for storing things like plugins. And then under that directory, we can see contact form 7, right? Some references there. Very interesting. Yeah, so it looks like, oh, there we go. So it looks like under contact form 7, we have an uploads directory with that interesting freak file that we looked at earlier. So that could come in handy, but it looks like contact form 7 is a good starting point. We could also just go to Google, for example, and, say, hey, contact form 7 CVE, right? Whoops, not EVE. And from here, can sort of go through maybe the CVE MITRE database. We can look at sort of the NIST details as well. But in this case, it looks like we do have a hit here. A lot of vulnerable plugins in WordPress, that's true. But in this case, it looks like, if I can zoom in here, contact form 7 plugin before 5.3.2 for WordPress allows unrestricted file upload and remote code execution because a file name may contain special characters. Interesting, right? So looks like this might be our match here, right? It's asking specifically what was the CVE, right? So we could just try this guy. Also want to see, before I verify that, was there any reference to a version number? Sometimes you can get a version number from the URL itself, right? The actual, sometimes the plugin has parameters in the URL that can identify a version, or maybe there's a directory under this plugin that might have some reference to a version. Not seeing anything right off the bat, but I am kind of zoomed in here, which makes it a little bit harder to see. Oh no, there we go. So it looks like, yeah, like I was saying, there's sometimes parameters for versions. And we can see in this case 5.3.1. Well, I think that fits under this here before 5.3.2. So this is definitely what we're looking for, right? Because this version, by definition, should be vulnerable to that kind of thing, I think, right? It was, versions before 5.3.2. So this got to be the CVE in question. Get it from the README. Yeah, good idea. I mean, if we had access to the file system that was running, we could figure that out. README, the README file for a plugin usually does have things like the version, different metadata. What plugin was exploited to get access? Was it not? Was it not this one? Do we need to hunt for that? I mean, I assume it's this. If this is the vulnerable one, they said that remote code execution was done from a file upload. We found a suspicious looking file. I assume it has to be related to that. What we could do is sort of try to figure out where the exploit took place, right? So maybe we grep for, if we just look at all the plugins, we try to enumerate all the plugins that we can find, if I can spell. Maybe we just grep out for plugins in access log. And then we can sort of break down, say, hey, what potential plugins were accessed? And then maybe, because I'm also seeing, saw a file thing. Yeah, simple file list. So that was another one I saw. That was related, I think, to that freak.php file we saw. Also contact form 7. Those might be the only two. But what we could do is, again, cut for those URLs, field 7, and then sort of sort unique, and then sort once more. And now we're just seeing, we're getting a bunch of noise as well, but we should see, some of the plugins that were used. So we have WordPress SEO, contact form 7, better WordPress security. I think that's actually a legitimate thing I've seen before. Activating plugins, WordPress SEO, some more of that. And then simple file list, and then contact form 7. Okay, so I think those are the only ones that we found. And so let's try to see what was accessed in relation to those files, right? So I'm going to rerun that. I will grep for contact. Now we can just look at these guys. And what I'm looking for is, yeah. So right here, something like this, where we have an upload, and it looks like, contact form 7 was used to upload that file, or maybe that's just where it was placed. But we have some references there. If we look at the other one, simple file. Yeah, there we go. So we can see uploader, file engine. So I'm assuming it's this one. We could also look for post requests, right? So if a file is being uploaded like this one here, we're probably gonna have a post request associated with that in order for the attacker to actually, move data onto the server, right? There has to be sort of a post request, right? So that could be another thing we look for. So let me clear that out. What we can do, access.log, and then we can look for sort of the get parameter here. What we can do is just look for post. Whoops. Grep for post. And there we go. It looks like we only have a few results. And so, post request for admin PHP. That could just be part of the login that we identified earlier. But we have 2 here using that Python request. User agent. Okay, so I think this is it, actually. It wasn't. That's weird, right? Because if this one is the vulnerable one, but a different plugin was used to actually upload the file. Maybe I'm not understanding that vulnerability right, but it looks like it's using a different plugin to actually upload the file or the web shell, I'm assuming. Or unless that was just a trick question to sort of make us do more research. But this is definitely a file that was uploaded from one of those IP addresses that we identified, right? I think. And it's using that simple file list plugin, uploading this EE upload engine.php. So what is this plugin? Let me do a search for that. WordPress exploit. Yeah, this one also has a CV associated with it. So are there multiple answers here? No, because it says contact form 7. Okay, I'm assuming that was maybe an attacker tried to, and they didn't have success for some reason, but a different plugin, in this case, was used to actually do the upload. And it looks like we have an exploit DB script here. So yeah, it's using Python, so that kind of tracks. Arbitrary file upload. I think this is it. Let's try to see. Importing requests, right? So that makes sense. That's what we saw in the user agent. So could be. Oh, there we go. There we go. So if we see the file name that was uploaded is ee-upload-engine.php. And if we look at the exploit itself, this is the file that gets uploaded with the exact same name. I don't know if this means anything. Whoops. I want to copy and see if this relates to anything. Nope. Looks like we're finding stuff related to the challenge. So yeah, this is I'm assuming the exact exploit that the attacker used to upload. Again, they didn't change any of these default values. So this almost becomes like a fingerprint that we can, that we can hunt off of, right? So again, we see this e-upload engine, simple file list. Looks like it's some sort of reverse shell using bash syntax here, right? On port 4444. I guess it would change the IP address. And then, yeah, this looks like this was it. And it's using Python request to do that, which tracks because that would be the user agent that would do that as well. And so in that case, I'm assuming that's going to be the answer there. So what plugin was exploited to get access? Plugin name here. And I think it needs version number as well. Did we get that? Not here. Okay, so I'll do a grep for simple file list. Try to get a version number here. Version 5. Yeah, version 5. Simple file list 5. Nope. Did I miss something? Let me do a search for version. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything different. Well, let me get rid of some of the noise here. Maybe that's my problem. No. I guess we can't get it from there, but I mean, we could just go based off the exploit, right? Which uses 4.2.2. Gonna assume it's that. I guess we can't really figure it out from that. There we go. Okay, that works. When in doubt, just find the exact exploit an attacker used, and it will give you all the information you need. What is the name of the PHP web shell file? Okay, so I don't think it's this one because this seems to be executing a reverse shell. not a web shell. But we did find that other PHP file, that freak one, right? So why don't we just list out all of those again? Let me cut, grab all those URLs. I'm going to sort them. Unique C and then sort.nr. And so now we're getting all of the unique files that were accessed. I can do a grep for PHP. And now, yeah, we're really cutting down the results now. Let me rerun that. So plugins.php, admin, PHP, EE file upload engine. So that's the one that we found earlier. Where was that freak one that we saw? I feel like I'm missing it in this output somewhere. Definitely saw it, and if I was smart and wrote it down, like I preach that you should do, I would have had it. Okay, let's try maybe something else. Is that going to change anything? No. I swear I saw it. And now I can't remember because it was in like that sort of leet speak kind of thing. Like it was like with a 3 instead of an E, I think. I don't know if this is going to pull anything. No. Was it like that? No. This is the part that sucks about doing this, is when you know what you're looking for, you just can't manipulate the data the way you want to pull it back. And I think I'm just missing something dumb here. Because that was anomalous enough to definitely be something interesting, right? So let me try to cut this down again. Oh, some of you guys have it in the chat. Thank you. If I can't find it in the next minute, I'm just going to do a search for that because, yeah, I should have written that down. Yeah, I feel like it's one of these lines. I'm just missing something. Let's verify that. Yeah, 4. Okay. Okay, maybe it wasn't a PHP file. Whoops. There we go. It was a PNG? What? Could have sworn it was a PHP at some point in the list. I do remember seeing a PNG, but I thought it got renamed or something. Because what was most likely happening is there was some sort of file restriction that you can't upload a PHP file to whatever this form was. But for some reason or not, you could upload a PNG, I guess. That's odd. Oh, I had a grep before every command I was running looking for plugins. That's why it wasn't working. I had a hidden grep at the start of every command I was running that was pre-filtering out the results. I hate when that happens. I hate when I look like an idiot in front of so many people. Okay, let's try that again. I'm just going to do that against access log. There we go. Now, there, I knew it was a PHP. I knew it was a PHP file. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is just cut up those results. There we go. So yeah, There's the web shell, and it is PHP. So maybe it was renamed, but yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it was probably, maybe they use that file manager, that simple list plugin, to rename again from a PNG over to a PHP, so it would get executed when the attacker navigates to it, right? And if we just go back and see the IP address that was associated with that, it's that weird 1721, which is interesting. So it looks like we have another IP address for our list, but that's got to be the reverse shell that was uploaded. Cool. Okay. There we go. What was the HTTP response code provided when the web shell was accessed for the final time? That should be pretty simple. We just need to take out this cut so we can pull back all the results. And I want to grab the last one, so I'll just do tail to pull back that single result there. All right, so just running tail. Show me the final time this file was accessed, and look for the status code, which is 404. Interesting. All right. There we go. We've completed the log analysis compromise WordPress challenge. Thank you all for the help there at the end when I, for some reason or another, had a grep command that was throwing everything off. Awesome work. There we go. All right. I hope you enjoyed that one. Again, we probably could have done that a lot quicker, but I like to sort of go through and explain my methodology and what I might look for during an investigation. I think it is helpful just to sort of see how other people, do things, right? Rather than just, I think a lot of people get into a habit of just going, through the question and just finding the answer and not sort of contextualizing what they're finding, right? Because again, we could have found out, hey, what is the admin login page? Sure. Just look at that in a vacuum. And then, what two tools might the attacker have used? We can look at the user agents, just look at that in sort of a vacuum and not contextualize, hey, maybe these user agents were used to access a particular part of the site, or maybe this lines up with an IP address that we discovered earlier, right? So again, I think putting things into context like that, while it's a lot harder to do in the command line, right? If we were using something like Elasticsearch or Splunk, we could have just ripped through this set of data and really made some interesting connections. But I think, again, having some command line kung fu like that comes in handy and really saves you in a lot of situations. All right, let's get back to some Q&A before we wrap up. Let me bring myself back. There we go. Let's see, we have a few questions pinned. I'm also scrolling up the chat. I haven't looked at it in a while since you guys saved me at the end there. Doing proper enumeration is the key to success in pen testing. Yeah, for sure. Also, as you just noticed, when doing an investigation, right, on the sort of blue team side as well, if we weren't doing things like enumerating the plugins that we had access to in the data, or if we weren't, enumerating things like version information, or even just, going through things iteratively and making those pivots, right? That's my favorite word I like to say is pivot, right? You find an interesting artifact or a field, right, that might be interesting. You can then use that as a pivot point to look at other things in context or through the lens of that previous thing you discovered, if that makes sense. TCM certs are great for polishing your skills, which will definitely come in handy when cracking interviews. Yeah, I mean, I can agree. For sure. I mean, we literally have people that tell us, for example, Andrew Bellini's PhD course, right? Folks are going through that, and then they end up in an interview and they're being asked for, to do tasks that they just did in the course, right, or in the training. So that's always been our goal, which is why it's so awesome to have courses like that, right? Majority of cybersecurity jobs seem to be blue team, aren't they? Yeah. Short answer is yeah. I mean, I don't know if there's an actual statistic or whatever, but probably like, maybe 8 out of every 10 jobs is more so on the blue side than, maybe penetration testing or red team, right? As you get more specialized, things kind of, as you sort of get more specialized, the amount of jobs out there kind of diminish. But also the amount of people that are qualified for those jobs also kind of diminishes as you get more specialized, right, and require more experience. So kind of evens itself out. But yeah, I would say in general, a lot more blue team oriented jobs like analyst or even things in like GRC, right? If you consider that blue team, security engineering, architecting, right? It doesn't have to just be working in a SOC, right? I was also an analyst that wasn't in a SOC, right? I was just part of a smaller kind of security team in a small to medium sized business, right? So you don't always have like these strict sort of parameters that you follow or like departments, right? Oftentimes you're wearing a lot of hats. You could just go through each of your command history. Yeah, I should have done that. That's a nice thing about working with the bash shell. Just go up in your command history. I'm just like slowly scrolling down the chat here. So I'm probably a bit behind. Oh, thank you, Alex. Appreciate that. I learn a lot more in those few minutes than I do in hours of reading videos. Hey, I mean, everyone learns different, right? This is kind of the way I learn as well. It's just by doing or like following along or watching, right? I have a ton of books on different, specialized fields or, certain topics in cybersecurity, but it's so hard for me to pick them up, even like on a Kindle. I hate reading. I shouldn't say that. I've grown to enjoy it a lot more in the last year, but again, it's just not my preferred learning style. I just get too easily distracted. So following along with something or doing like video based kind of training and taking notes, that's my preferred method as well. So what are your top tips for somebody looking to switch careers into the cybersecurity field? That's a good question. I would say, again, if you're not in the field at the moment, and Andrew Bellini speaks to this as well. I've heard him a few times. Is sort of do a inventory of your current role and think about all the different things you do currently that relate to security in some way, right? It's going to be very rare that you're in a role where you're not doing some kind of security, right? If it's, for example, a help desk role, you're doing a ton of, security hardening practices or even just things like access management, right? Even if you're not even in a tech field, I'm sure there is something kind of that you're doing in the day-to-day that does sort of resolve around security in some way. And so use that as your advantage and sort of use that to sort of propel you in certain directions and be able to speak to things from that level. But again, you're going to see a lot of the same advice in terms of like logical or logistical and technical kind of stuff, like, get certain certification or take a certain training, right? Again, I answered this earlier, but I can't really recommend a one size fits all kind of thing. Really just depends on what area in the field that you want to get into, right? If it's, blue team or penetration testing, right? There's a ton of different avenues you can go down, and the sort of training effort for each of those can look wildly different, right? How often do you stream? I see like once in a while. Yeah, I mean, one of us at TCM streams every week, right? But we kind of rotate out as people need coverage or people are out or whatever. So yeah, I would say every at least once a month I'm on here. We do have quite a good amount of people that do stream, and we sort of again rotate it out. So just depends on the week, right? If you're in the Discord, Britt usually gives a heads up in terms of who's going to be doing the stream, and sometimes if it's a special stream, we might have some more information about what to expect, right? Does Blue Team Labs Online only allow retired machines to be streamed on YouTube? I think so, just because that's kind of the sort of standard practice around like things like Hack the Box, or I think Try Hack Me too. I don't know if Try Hack Me retires rooms. I think they have sort of an embargo period when they release like a challenge that they don't want you to stream it. But I know Hack the Box, like they don't like you streaming or posting videos about rooms that are still active or not retired. So I assume if I look in the sort of terms of Blue Team Labs Online, I'm assuming they also respect the same thing. So that's why I'm sort of just doing the retired ones. Yeah, it's a good point. I honestly, I like the diversity as well. If I really want to get into the sort of low level stuff or IoT stuff, tuning into Bellini streams are great. When Alex does his web stuff, just goes over my head, right? And I even have a background in web development, and I'm just like, you know, treading water when I try to follow along with those. So it is nice to have different, opportunities or different specializations or fields, right? It is nice to do the Blue Team side of things, a few times a month or, every month. And OSINT works with a cybersecurity analyst, or are they the same person? No, OSINT is kind of like a separate kind of, I guess, field or discipline for open source intelligence. Yeah, they're kind of different. Like, you use a lot of OSINT in practice as a cybersecurity analyst, right? Or of course as a penetration tester. It's sort of more so a skill set. I know there are some like OSINT, maybe analyst or OSINT operator kind of jobs out there. I've never particularly sort of looked into that route, but in terms of the skill set, if you're just referring to open source intelligence and collecting information about things, we do that all the time. Again, from the penetration testing perspective, when you're trying to figure out an employee's maybe email addresses, or you're hunting for credentials that have been breached, right? More so for penetration testing purposes. But on the Blue Team side, I think OSINT falls under a lot of things too as well, like finding a indicator of compromise and maybe doing a search for that across reputational databases, or looking up who is information, right? I kind of put that under more so, I guess you could say maybe threat intelligence, but also open source intelligence kind of domain as well, which can be a very useful and important evidence source or evidence realm that we need to properly do investigations, right? I want to study for cybersecurity. Any guidance? Yeah, pick a course or something that you're interested in, and just do it, right? That's the thing. I think a lot of people, I'm not saying you, but I think a lot of people in general kind of get into this analysis paralysis kind of state, myself included, where you just have so many different options and so many different paths or things that you might want to go down, and it's hard to justify starting, right? Or just diving in. Because in my perspective, I'm always like, I just need to make sure I'm doing the right, optimal, perfect thing. Same kind of thing with like fitness as well, right? You get a lot of people like, I can't go to the gym unless I know the optimal, scientifically backed routine to do. It's like, no, just go, enjoy, work hard. And in the case of cybersecurity training or learning, just document and take notes and play with things, play around. You're not going to be perfect at first at whatever you're going down, right? If you're doing like a Blue Team course, like the SOC 101, you're not going to be able to dig through and rip through a PCAP file immediately and sort of start to pull out indicators, right? You need to sort of build out that methodology, and that only comes with repetition, right? Again, it's like in the gym, just putting in reps. So really what it comes down to is just don't overthink it. Just pick what you want to go down. Like, is it a path or a specific course, or even if it's just like a blog or like a video that you want to follow along to build out a lab or something, just go for it. You're going to get stuck. You're going to have to Google things and troubleshoot, but it all comes with building that methodology. All right, everybody. I think so. We're at half past now, 1:30 on my end. I think it's time we start to gear down the stream and wrap things up. I really need to get back to doing some recording for the SOC 201 course, and a lot more labbing and research I need to do. Pretty much going to be working till the wee hours of the night for the next few weeks to put that together. So with that, hope you all have a great day. Before I end the stream, I will just answer this one question: is reliance on Googling bad of sorts? Not at all. You know, it's Google is going to be arguably the most effective tool you have in your toolkit. No matter what kind of field you're going down or path, you're always going to be Googling things. And the people that don't, or refuse to sort of take that initiative, I think are going to fall a bit behind, right? If you get an error message, right, or some sort of warning message, a tool isn't working, or you're trying to do something that's just not working. Do you Google the error message you're getting and try to find the answer, maybe in the forums or even on page 2 of Google, rather than just the first result, right? So a lot of that, again, is just part of the sort of analyst methodology, right? And whether you're doing penetration testing or doing investigations, Google is your friend, and we should treat it as a friend. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you all for attending. I think that was a pretty fun stream, pretty chill. And I will see you guys probably in a few weeks for the next sort of blue team stuff. But definitely next week, I think Andrew Bellini is going to be doing some super cool. I don't actually know what he's going to be doing, but he always has something really fun up his sleeve. So we will see next week. I'll be there as well. So thank you, everyone.